Hello and welcome back to this part 2 of the web scraping video where I'll be going through the advanced web scraping concept. So in the previous video, we saw where web scraping kind of fits in our RAG systems, where like a human, you have searched for some content, you know which website you want to navigate to, and now you want to get that data out of the website. And the best way to get the data out is the markdown format. Why? Because most of these large language models have been trained on a ton of markdown data, and they understand the markdown content and format very clearly. So if you want to provide some kind of context to your large language models, the best way to do that is to provide that in the markdown format. And they really love that. So if we can extract some data from the web page using the markdown format, we are golden. How do we know that production ready applications are built using the markdown format? We know that by looking at some production ready applications, for example, Firecrawl. So if you take a look at Firecrawl, what it does is it will take a website and it will convert it into the markdown format. And you can see, for example, I took this particular Olama OpenAI compatibility blog, the example that I took in last video that I made. So this is the web page that we are looking at, and Firecrawl converts it into the markdown format. We'll be building a tool similar to this in this video, and we'll be building upon the concepts that we used in the last video, right? So in the last video, we saw how we can use beautiful soup to create our soup from the response text that we are getting from the request. And using that particular soup, we extracted the paragraphs out. We created a particular structured class because whenever we are scraping, we are dependent on a few attributes: the name of the website, what time we scraped at, right? Because the website contents changes, it is dynamic. So we also want the time at which we scraped. And then the list of all the paragraphs using the soup, right? So we got using the soup list of all the paragraphs, and we created this particular class and we returned back, right? So let me run this example. And before I run this example, I'll actually show you what dependencies are required for it. So for this example, the only two dependencies that are required are requests and beautiful soup. Only these two dependencies are required. So let me go through the README file over here. So I'll open my README file. I'll create a Conda environment. So let me show you what Conda environment I have. So Conda. So these are the 4 Conda environments. I already have this particular Conda environment, but you may not, right? So what I'll do is actually I'll remove this Conda environment so that you can set up everything from scratch, just like I have. So if I do Conda remove, and environment name is provided by the name attribute, and I can have the web scraper over here as the environment name. And what else I can pass is like remove everything from this. And it's asking me, do you really want to remove it? I want to say yes, I do. And it's going to remove this environment for me. And it's asking everything within the environment, including Conda environment configurations, and any non-Conda files will be deleted. Do you want to continue? Yes, I do. And it will delete it. So now if I do a list again, you will see that that environment isn't there, right? So I want to start with a blank slate, just like you guys, so that you can follow along over here. So what I have already done is I've already cloned the repo. So I have the repo with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'll create this Conda environment along with you. And once this environment is created, then I will activate this environment. So yes, I do want to create it. And then I do want to activate this environment. So I'm going to copy this, and you see how it says base over here. Once I'll activate the Conda environment, it will say web scraper. All right. So we have our Conda environment and we are in the right directory over here. Now in this directory, make sure you are in this directory because there is a requirements.txt file in the web scraper directory, which is the one that you want. So now we're gonna run this particular requirements.txt file over here, and it will install all the requirements for you. All right, it will take a few seconds and all done. So now I am in the right content environment. I have installed all the requirements and I'll run this particular tool internet search, which we were looking at. This we already ran in the previous video. Just wanna make sure that we are all set and ready with this new content environment. So Python tool internet search. Oh, internet scrape. Sorry, not search. Netscape.py, and it will run our, oh, it has no documents in it. Why? Oh, because we have provided an incorrect document. All right, all right. So this is actually a good example because this particular document that we have provided, this document has a lot of JavaScript on it. And I can show you that why this did not work. Because this actually forms a foundation for our next example over here. So we talked about this briefly in our previous video, but let me show you again. If I run this, you see how JavaScript was loading over here, and this is a more complex page because of which it is harder for Beautiful Soup to extract content from here. So no wonder it failed, because it is not possible for simple Beautiful Soup to extract the content out of here, right? So you see how paragraphs is null for this particular page because it's a complex page. Now let's change it to a simpler page, which I already had checked in, which is our Olama OpenAI compatibility page, which is just a simple page like this one, very simple page. Let's run this over here again, and you will see that for a simple page, Beautiful Soup works beautifully, right? So it does extract the content out over here. Now, let's move on to our more complex example, which will simulate what Playground for Firecrawl does, right? So how can we take a website over here and convert it into a markdown format in such a pretty looking markdown format over here? In order for us to understand that, we need to understand two main tools that are in play over here. So let me open the script and then I'll talk about it. So this is the tool Crawlee Scrape. All right. So you will see two new tools have been introduced over here. What are those two tools? Playwright and Crawlee. So Playwright is a tool that helps you automate web browsers like Chrome, Firefox, right? All these web browsers that I have. And imagine that if you need to visit a website and perform tasks like clicking a button, filling out forms, or navigating through different pages, then this is where Playwright comes into picture. Instead of doing all these activities manually, Playwright will allow you to write a script that performs these tasks automatically for you. So it's like having a robot that can browse through the website for you, but it does it behind the scenes, even without opening a browser window, right? So this is what is called the headless mode, which we'll be utilizing today. Playwright is especially useful when you need to extract information from websites that require user interaction, or when they load content dynamically using JavaScript, which is exactly the example which we saw over here, right? So like one of these help pages, it loads the content with the JavaScript dynamically. And this is where Playwright can come into picture and help us in extracting content. This is just a sample page that I'm using over here. Doesn't mean that we need to scrape this page. But what I'm saying is that pages that are dynamic can be scraped using such tools and technologies, right? So if you want to scrape, let's say, the latest headlines from a news website that loads the news articles as you scroll down with those infinite scrolls, right? Even then, Playwright can handle those by mimicking the scrolling features and the clicking actions. So Playwright is not just like extracting this static pages that are dynamically loaded, but you can also do some dynamic features of scrolling through and then retrieving the content from there, right? So that's what Playwright is. And now the second tool that we are using is Crawlee, right? So there is a Playwright involved, and then there is a Crawlee involved. And we are using both these tools together, right? So what is Crawlee? So now Crawlee is a more specialized tool which is designed for web scraping and crawling. And Playwright, so what's the difference, right, between Playwright and Crawlee? So Playwright focuses on automating the browser tasks, whereas Crawlee builds on top of the tools like Playwright to handle large-scale scraping projects efficiently, right? So Crawlee will help with an efficiency aspect of it, whereas Playwright will actually automate the browsing capabilities of it, right? So Crawlee is more on the web scraping and crawling side of it, whereas Playwright is more on automating the browser task side of it, right? So scrolling down, letting the JavaScript load and all that is a part of the Playwright, whereas crawling on the page, scraping the web content and all that, that is on the Crawlee side of it. So you can think of Crawlee as a more advanced tool that not only lets you visit websites and extract data, but also manages the entire scraping process for you. So you don't have to do that scraping manually, right? So Crawlee also comes with built-in features like error handling, session management, and also something called proxy rotation. So we are not using some of these advanced concepts over here yet, being the keyword, which we will use in future, but you'll see how session management is such a huge thing that we can get with Crawlee, which is almost impossible with Beautiful Soup alone. So if you do use all these advanced tools, then you can automatically handle things like retries. So if a request fails, you can retry. You can also switch between different IP addresses, right? So sometimes some of these websites, they block you if you are being a bot. So if you build things like this, and if it's a bot, then those sites can block you too. But Crawlee, and this video is only for educational purposes, so I'm just educating you over here, not promoting this, but Crawlee can help you in rotating the IP addresses, right? So you can do those things in your home lab environment where you're testing all locally, internally. You can rotate IP addresses and all. We're not going to be using or showing those capabilities over here, but I just wanted you to be aware that Crawlee is a very advanced tool that lets you do session management, IP address rotation, and way more than and proxy rotation, and way more than what a simple Beautiful Soup 4 can do for you, right? So now let's go deeper in and let's see how our script is structured over here, and let's see how it extracts the content and data. So again, you will see that we are using this data class called scrape data. And if you compare this with the previous scrape data class, then you'll see that yes, we again have website name scraped at, paragraphs, total words, and we have a new attribute. And this new attribute is markdown. And this markdown is similar to what we saw in the Firecrawl. So the Firecrawl gives you this markdown content, which is what we also have over here now. So when we return this data class back out of our method, we will have markdown also as part of it, along with the other attributes that are there. Okay, so how and what features of Crawlee and Playwright are we using? So from Playwright, we are using 3 features. 1, headless browser automation, right? So I'm using Playwright's capabilities to control a browser in the headless mode, which means without any visible UI, to navigate to the target website, load content, interact with it programmatically. And this is very crucial for dynamic scraping of websites where content is loaded via JavaScript, right? So this is very important. I'm also using asynchronous operations, right? So you see there is a wait for load, this particular aspect of it, right? So wait for load state and network idle. What does this do? So this ensures that the page is fully loaded and it is idle, right? What does that mean? That there is no more network activity before we proceed. And this is very important because if you scrape before there is more network activity, it means that there is a possibility that some more JavaScript is working in the background to load the content and you can miss out on that particular content. So I have realized that using wait for load state network idle is very crucial before proceeding. This helps in ensuring that all the dynamic content has been rendered, which is especially important for extracting complete and overall accurate data from the website, right? And then the third part is HTML content extraction. So you see we are using this context.page content over here, and this is what does the HTML context extraction. This allows us to parse the HTML using Beautiful Soup, which is again the library that we saw for searching through HTML and XML documents, right? So now from here, we already know what to do. We can take the paragraphs out and we can put them in. We are also using one more library over here. What is that? That is Markdownify, right? So Markdownify is an amazing library so you see we are importing it as MD. So you will see MD over here. So what we're doing is we are taking this Markdownify library, passing this HTML content in there, and this particular content will be handled by Markdownify to convert into Markdown for us. This is huge, right? This is amazing because we do not have to do this conversion. There is a library that already does it for us. This is huge. So just by the virtue of using Crawlee, by using Playwright, and extracting the dynamic content out after waiting for the page to load completely when the network is idle, right? Then passing it through the Markdownify gives us the markdown content of the web page. Very simple concept and very powerful tools individually, but once they are used all together in conjunction, this makes for a very production ready application that can extract the data out of some complex websites and parse them and convert them into the markdown format, right? So let's take a look. After that, we are closing the inactive browsers. This is important because we want to make sure that we do not have any resources open. So we are gonna close those inactive browsers and resources. And then we are populating our data into our scrape data object and returning it back from here, right? And in order to print this, I have created just a simple print scrape data method over here, which will print each and every content of our scrape data, right? So we are then gonna print it. So we print the website name, total number of words and all that, paragraphs, we print everything. You'll see that the paragraphs are printed in yellow and the markdown content is printed in magenta, right? And this will be useful because you can see how the content differs when you just take the paragraphs out and when you print the markdown out, right? And then we can run the scrape and all that, and you'll see how to do this too. So let's just take an example of this one website, right? So the URLs to scrape, I'm just going to scrape this one particular website, olama.com blog OpenAI compatibility, and let's see how the result is from this particular website. So I'm going to go back to my terminal, right? And let me do a clear over here, and let's run Python tool crawley scrape.py over here. Okay, before I do that, actually, if I go back to the instructions, there are some more instructions over here. There's a Playwright install dependencies. So let's run this. Because for Playwright to work, you'll need to install the dependencies for it. And it is going to install. I think it's faster on mine because I have them already installed. So it just checks whether they are installed or not. And yep, they are all in there. And then Playwright install. This is also the last command that you need to run. Playwright install, and that is done too. Okay, all right. So now we can go in and we can run our tool crawleyscrape.py. So let's go back in here, and we are in the right web scraper folder, and we are in the web scraper conda environment. And this is where we are going to run our example that can crawl. So Python tool Crawlee webscrape.py. And there you go. There you go. So it is now send the request to Playwright crawler, and it has extracted the content. Now let's take a look. So we see that the yellow content on the top is from the paragraph extraction, right? So this is a nice paragraph extraction that has been done over here for us, right? Let us take a look at what the markdown content was extracted. And this is where you will see how all the markdown data is extracted. And this is awesome, right? So if I go down over here, you will see that all this markdown content from this website that has been extracted, right? This is way more and useful information, right? So this is all useful information for large language model, because large language models are trained on this kind of data. So they really love the markdown format, and all this is extracted out in the markdown. This is really, really good information for our large language model. If you see, all this large language models will love, they will absolutely love this particular markdown format that got out from here. And everything that you see over here, this is beautiful. Like this is this is love to my eyes. Everything over here is amazing. So all this markdown format that it is extracting into is exactly what we wanted. So this was a simple example though. So let's take a slightly complex example that we've been using, right? So just as a sample, I'm only using this as a sample to see if it even works on a complex web page. So let's do that. So if we replace this with a complex web page, like a web page that loads JavaScripts, right? Like for example, this particular web page, let's try to see what happens if we use this over here. So I'm going to run this example again on a complex web page that has JavaScripts that uses JavaScript to load the content. And let's see that. So now we have our browser initiated in the background, and it is running using Crawlee and Playwright, and it is extracting the content, and there you go. There you go. So if you see using Crawlee and Playwright, we were able to get the paragraphs out, right? Which is less information. So all this yellow part is the paragraph information, right? Which is okay, all right, it is decent amount of information, but just take a look at how much information you got out from the markdown content, right? The markdown content is amazing over here. So for this example, where we had only JavaScript loading the content. So if you go back and take a look at the web page, right? View page source, you will not see any such information over here. This is it, just 3 lines. This is it. There's nothing on the right hand side that gives you a lot of data, right? There's nothing over there. And that is why if you do the beautiful soup for this, you get almost no information out of it. But when you use some browser automation tools, right? For example, Crawlee and Playwright, then you are able to get the information out, which is really a big deal. So which Crawlee features are we using? So from Crawlee, we are using the Playwright integration, right? So Crawlee over here acts as a wrapper around the Playwright, providing a more robust and easier to use interface for web scraping tasks, right? So we used the Playwright crawler, right? So let me show you over here on the top. If you noticed, we imported the Playwright crawler over here from Crawlee, which leverages Crawlee's ability to manage the Playwright's browser instances. So Crawlee is managing Playwright's browser instances. It is handling the requests and managing the sessions without manually handling the low-level details, right? So without us having to manually handle all those low-level details, Crawlee is handling it for us. So The request handler function in Crawlee allows us to define how each page should be processed when it is loaded, right? And let me show you the request handler right here. So in this, it will include the parsing of the HTML content, extracting of the specific data points like paragraphs and all that, and then they are converted into a more structured format using this particular request handler that we have over here. Also, concurrency and request management is also one of the Crawlee features that we are using. So our example over here that we have used, the max request per crawl is set to 5, which is, I mean, limited concurrency over here, but Crawlee allows for much more sophisticated management of concurrent requests and error handling. So in a large web scraping project, if you want to build, then you can increase this from 5 to a very large number. If you have enough RAM, sufficient RAM and all that, then increasing this max request per crawl to a bigger number, right? It actually helps in the crawling for a bigger project with thousands of pages. In a large scale project, you can involve Crawlee too. And then Crawlee is also used for data storage and management, where there are some pre-built or built-in mechanisms for storing the scraped data, even though we are not doing it over here, right? But we are just manually constructing a scraped data object, but Crawlee has the ability to manage and store data persistently through integrations with data sets or custom data storage solutions and all that. And we don't need to go in deeper into it, but I just wanted to give you an overview that Crawlee can do all those things too. Even though in our use case, we are not making use of that, but Crawlee is capable of doing that over here. So this particular Playwright crawler is very crucial in this whole extraction of the content from a web page, setting up all these attributes, headless true, max request per crawl and all that is very important. And then some other libraries, like I said, that we are using over here are Beautiful Soup 4. So although it is not directly part of Playwright or Crawlee, we are using Beautiful Soup for HTML parsing, right? This is a lightweight way to navigate through HTML content and extract the required information from the pages, especially when we have gotten the content out of it, right? So we have gotten the content out, and to get the paragraphs out, I'm just using the Beautiful Soup over here, just to show you the differences between just getting the paragraphs out and how to compare it with a markdown converted format, right? So for which we are using markdownify, which is a function that is used to convert the entire HTML content into the markdown format, showcasing you how you can easily transform data, right? You don't have to write a lot of code behind it. All that has been done for you in the markdownify. So you can easily transform the HTML content over here into the markdown content by just using this markdownify, and that's it, right? And then I'm using Python's data class to structure the scrape data into a well-defined format. So I do like this approach of having the scraped at along with the scraped data in the class over here, right? So whenever we are gonna store this in the metadata format, I wanna know the time when this was scraped. So I can have multiple instances of it. And if, let's say, this is a very crucial website that I'm monitoring, then it's different versions at different point of time, right? You can take a look at, and it comes in really handy when a particular reference to a documentation has changed, and you want to just take a look at, hey, when did this reference change? And you want to send that information to a large language model and have it respond back. Right, so let's now, I want to show you a couple more aspects of this particular program that we have. So if you want to run multiple requests, you can run them using an array of URLs that you want to scrape, right? So for example, you can pass in these two, and this is a sequential scraping though. right? So we're gonna scrape this sequentially. So it will scrape the example.com first and then this particular web page over here. So let's try doing that. So if you have multiple URLs that you want to scrape, you can just pass them in an array list. It will go to the first one, and then it will go to the second one, and then it will give you the answer back. There you go. And there you go. Okay. So what it did is that it actually was first getting the data out of the first URL and then trying to get data out of the second URL. It's then creating a list of such URLs, the data, right? So scrape data list, it is getting a list of that. And then it is iterating over there and then printing it. So it's not printing right after scraping, but it is getting a list of that data, right? So that is why once the scraping job was done, the example.com, this is the first website, example.com, it's scrape date, total number of words scraped, and the paragraphs were printed over here. Then the markdown content in purple was printed. Then it moved on to the second one, which is the website, which is this one, scraped at this, total number of words 265. These are the paragraph words, and then the markdown content, which is huge, right? So this is all the ton of information that we have over here. So this is actually it. This is all I wanted to show to you guys in a simple scraping, which was the previous video, tool internet scrape.py, and a more complex scraping example where tool Crawlee scrape is being used, right? So where does this now fit into our big RAG diagram and RAG picture? So let's go back to our original example. If the user has asked, what is the OpenAI compatibility for Ollama? Then we do an internet search. How do we do that search? It's outside of the scope of today's discussion, but we do an internet search one way or the other. We get a list of URLs back, right? This is where our advanced scraping concepts start now. So this video starts after you have gotten the list of URLs back, right? So let's take a look at this example. You have the list of URLs with you and you want to get the content out. So in this video, we have the list of URLs and we are building this section over here. We are building the section of navigating the web page using Crawlee, right? So we loaded using Playwright, actually, we loaded the web browser in the background and we are extracting the data using Crawlee, right? So we are getting the document out using Markdownify after that. So document creation is using the Markdownify. So we are using these three tools in conjunction, Crawlee, Playwright, and Markdownify, to get the markdown content from an existing web page, which will then be used downstream for embedding, creation of the knowledge base and all that, which will then be used for our RAG pipeline, right? So this is the section of the RAG that we have addressed today by building a production ready application. And will this be able to crawl everything? Probably not. There are some websites that do have like the Cloudflare protection, right? So there are some websites, there are ways to get around that too. But I think that those are more complex websites and we do not even need to go to that much of detail. If a website has done so much of measures to make it harder to scrape, I don't even want to scrape it, right? I just want to do a simple web search for simple pages and slightly complex pages, which can return the data in the markdown format, which this particular tool Crawlee scrape does the best. Are there ways to get around other complex scenarios too? Yes, but I think it's the way too far, and we don't need to do all the complex ways in which websites have put. If website has put some protection around its scraping functionalities, we should respect that too. So everything that I have shown you today is only for learning purposes. It is only for understanding how to crawl and how to scrape. Anytime when you are scraping the content, make sure that you have permission from the website to scrape, and you are not doing something that you're not supposed to do, right? So please make sure that you are doing everything right. You know what you are doing when you're using such tools. But I just wanted to inform you, educate you that these are the ways in which you can use scraping tools to scrape some advanced content from the websites that do not load normally in a static way. All right. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I'd love to hear your feedback. Please continue watching the series, and we'll join all these concepts, thoughts together into a full-fledged RAG pipeline. Thanks again.